The men building the most functional muscle after 60 aren't in American gyms. They're in Japan, and they're not following a program. They're following habits built into the day. No gym required, no hour blocked, no protocol to maintain. 4 muscle-building habits from Japan that fit any schedule. The eating principle that resets your hormonal environment daily. The social structure that keeps cortisol low and muscle intact. The 10-minute morning habit that makes every workout more effective. And the mindset that separates men who build from men who just keep starting over.
Habit 4. Hara Hachibu. Stop before you're full. This isn't a diet. There's no macro tracking, no caloric ceiling, no app required. It's a decision made at the table, made before the signal arrives. Hara Hachibu is the Okinawan practice of stopping at 80% full, not satisfied, not stuffed, 80%. The principle sounds simple until you understand why it works and why the American alternative is working against you on the hormonal level. The satiety signal from the stomach takes 15 to 20 minutes to reach the hypothalamus. That's not opinion. That's the speed of the vagal nerve pathway carrying the message. By the time your brain registers that you've had enough, you've already been eating for several minutes past the point your body actually needed. The American habit of eating until full isn't indulgence. It's a timing problem built into every meal. For men over 40 with body recomposition as a goal, more muscle, less visceral fat, the chronic mild caloric restriction that Hara Hachibu produces has measurable downstream effects: reduced systemic inflammation, improved insulin sensitivity, a hormonal environment tilted away from fat storage and toward the conditions where muscle retention and recomposition are possible. This isn't aggressive caloric restriction. It's not intermittent fasting. It's not a protocol with an end date. It's stopping slightly earlier than the body was conditioned to stop, consistently at every meal for years. The Japanese men in Okinawa who practice this don't think of it as discipline. It became the baseline, the default, the way eating works. The American baseline is the opposite, and it was built by an environment designed to push past that 80% point at every opportunity. Changing the default doesn't require willpower indefinitely. It requires recognizing that the signal you've been waiting for, fullness, was always arriving too late to be useful. The next habit has nothing to do with food or exercise. It operates on a system most men never consider when they think of muscle, and its absence may be costing more than any missed workout.
Habit 3. Moai, the social structure that protects muscle. This is the habit that gets dismissed first because it doesn't look like training. It doesn't feel like discipline. It sounds like the kind of thing a wellness podcast recommends alongside breathing exercises and gratitude journals. And men over 45 who've been around long enough have a calibrated skepticism for that category. Set that skepticism aside for 60 seconds, because the mechanism here is hormonal, not motivational. Moai is the Japanese concept of a stable, long-term social support group. A small circle, not a network, not followers, not colleagues, people you move through life with consistently. In Okinawa, Moai groups walk together, eat together, and age together. The commitment is decades long. The group is small enough to be real. Research from Blue Zone studies documents what happens physiologically in men who maintain this structure: chronically lower cortisol levels compared to socially isolated counterparts. Not marginally lower, measurably lower, consistently lower across years of longitudinal data. Here's why that matters for muscle specifically. Cortisol and testosterone operate in direct opposition. When cortisol is chronically elevated, not acutely from a hard workout, but chronically from sustained psychological stress and social isolation, testosterone suppression follows. The catabolic environment that chronic cortisol creates doesn't denounce itself as a hormone problem. It shows up as recovery that takes longer than it should, muscle that doesn't respond the way it used to, a baseline that keeps shifting in the wrong direction. The man training alone, without consistent social structure, without accountability that predates last month's gym membership, is carrying a cortisol load that no supplement addresses and no program accounts for. The Japanese solution isn't therapy, it's infrastructure. A small group of men, consistent over time with shared physical activity built in. Most American men don't have that. Not because they can't, because the culture never built it as a default. The default is solo. The default is self-reliant. The default is handling it alone. And the default is quietly expensive hormonally in ways that compound every year after 50. The next habit is the most immediately applicable in this video. 10 minutes, no equipment, and it changes what every workout after it delivers. Want a strong and healthy body? Hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel yet, click the subscribe button.
Habit 2. Taiso. Intentional movement in short windows. 10 minutes every morning. No gym, no equipment, no program to follow. That's it. That's the habit. And if your instinct is that 10 minutes doesn't move the needle, that's exactly the American fitness logic this habit dismantles. Taiso began in Japan in 1928, a structured sequence of mobility and muscle activation movements broadcast by radio, practiced by millions every morning before the workday started. It still runs today in corporate offices, schoolyards, public parks. Men in their 70s doing the same sequence they learned at 7. Not because it's nostalgic, because it works. The mechanism isn't the exercises themselves, it's the principle behind them. NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, is the category of physical output that happens outside formal training sessions. Research consistently documents that men who distribute intentional movement across the day in short blocks accumulate greater total muscle activation, better insulin sensitivity, and lower inflammatory markers than men who concentrate all physical effort into a single weekly session of equivalent total volume. 10 minutes of Taiso in the morning does 3 things that the first set of any workout can't replicate. It circulates synovial fluid through joints that have been static for 8 hours of sleep. It activates the neuromuscular pathways that the training session will later load under heavy demand. And it establishes a movement baseline for the nervous system before the day accumulates its cognitive and physical debt. For the American man who says he has no time, Taiso is the argument that time was never the real constraint. 10 minutes exists in every morning, before the phone, before the coffee, before the first obligation of the day claims the window. The fitness industry never sold 10 minutes because 10 minutes can't be packaged, branded, or priced at a premium. The last habit isn't a movement or a meal. It's a way of thinking about the work itself. And it's the reason everything else on this list either compounds or collapses. Habit 1. Shokunin, the craftsman's approach to training. Shokunin is a Japanese word that doesn't translate cleanly into English. The closest approximation is craftsman, but that misses the weight of it. Shokunin is the man who dedicates his life to the mastery of a single discipline. The sushi chef who has made the same cut for 40 years. The carpenter who has joined the same joint 10,000 times. Not because he lacks imagination, because he understands something about repetition that the culture of novelty never will. Mastery isn't reached by variety, it's reached by depth. Applied to training, Shokunin is the direct opposite of what the American fitness industry sells. New program every 6 weeks, new exercises to shock the muscle, new protocol based on the latest research. The implicit message is that variety is progress, that changing the stimulus is the same as advancing the adaptation. It isn't. The neuromuscular research on skill acquisition and strength adaptation is consistent. The learning curve on any compound movement pattern extends far longer than most men allow before switching. The squat, the hinge, the press, the pull, these patterns have layers of efficiency, coordination, and motor unit recruitment that take months to develop and years to master. The man who switches programs every 6 weeks isn't progressing through those layers. He's resetting at the surface of each new one. What Shokunin produces in training is this: a man who has done the same fundamental movements long enough that the nervous system executes them with precision, under fatigue, under load, under the conditions where most injuries happen and most gains are made or lost. That precision isn't exciting. It doesn't make for good content. It doesn't sell a new program. Most men over 40 who feel stuck
who train consistently and don't progress, aren't stuck because their program is wrong. They're stuck because they've never stayed with anything long enough to exhaust what it had to offer. They abandoned the plateau instead of working through it. That's not a training problem. That's a harder conversation. What did you think of this video? Drop your honest opinion in the comments. I actually read everything. Hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel yet, click the subscribe button.